CEOs of 145 U.S. companies jumping into the nation's controversial gun debate. The heads of Uber, Gap, and Twitter, among others, sent a letter to the Senate urging lawmakers to take action on gun violence. They're seeking expanded background checks and red flag laws, which allow courts to remove guns from people who might threaten themselves or others. Ruby Media Group President Kris Ruby is here. Thank you for coming on this morning. Was that letter a good idea for the companies that signed on? But what about the companies, Amazon, Tesla, et cetera, that didn't sign on?
Yeah, Lauren, it's a really interesting question, right? Because if we broaden this out and really look at it, and when we evaluate, was it a good idea or was it not? Taking a political stand as a CEO traditionally used to be considered public relations suicide, right? And now it's almost become a business necessity. So when did that change really happen? And when did political activism become such an important component of branding and politics today?
When did that happen? Because you have the Business Roundtable redefining corporate responsibility. It's about, society, not necessarily investors and return. What was the change?
Well, I think one of the changes right now is that you have millennial consumers and those who are under 30 years old who are expecting executives really to have heavy corporate social responsibility in their leadership and management. But I think this is highly problematic for a number of different reasons, right? One, shareholders may not necessarily have signed up for this in terms of, what they were looking for when they made investments, and they may not politically agree with certain moves that are being made. Two is that you have these leaders that are saying, I'm going to take a stand for all of my employees across my company, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is, what if those employees don't necessarily agree with their leaders of the company? Can they really even say that? And most of the time they can't.
Does it seem to you, Kris, whether we're talking about the Equinox owner having a fundraiser for the president, or, and I can't say which executive or which company, but another high-level billionaire had a fundraiser for the president, and some charities that he was involved with were affected. They pulled out as a result of him having that fundraiser. Does it seem to only work when the politician is speaking for President Trump?
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you bring up, right? Because there's a double standard and hypocrisy in all of this as well, right? So there are certain things where, yes, if you are left-leaning in certain respects, then I think that people are going to applaud you and say, what a great leader you are, and this is such a great move. I think if you do anything that's very right-leaning, as we've seen, and as you just mentioned, when people did pull out, they say, how could you do this? I'm not going to support you. I'm canceling my membership, and this is the worst thing in the world.
And then if you do nothing, you're in trouble too. So it's kind of like, what do you do? And if you're an investor, how do you respond to all of these changes? Kris Ruby, we have to leave it there. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You too.